From our daily check of attendance for the previous week, I haven't looked at today's one because normally it comes around this time. The number of teachers that were coming as compared to the number we were expecting was over 70%. There is one or two provinces where it is still depressed, but generally we are over 70%. So those who are supposed not to have enough money and whatever, we are hoping by the end of this week they will have borrowed enough money to go back to work.
That's Tumisang Tabela, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. The Chakos you hear capture perfectly the government's attitude towards legitimate labor concerns in the country. They just don't care.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you
We don't care.
They don't. If a whole doctor has to get a side hustle just to make ends meet, what of the domestic worker taking care of the doctor's household? What of the retail worker whose salary is still in local currency, but the company she works for has long since stopped accepting local currency as payment? What of the sex worker? What of the farm worker? Who's fighting for these people? There is no hiding that we have labor problems in Zimbabwe. But just how far do these problems go? And more importantly, when we find out how deep these problems go, what are we going to do about it? I say we because when it comes to labor issues, it's not just the government at fault, is it? Most of us employ at least one person. Given the opportunity, what would your employees say about you as an employer? Ladies and gentlemen, war vets and unfocused youth, welcome to another episode of Properganda with Kandoro. There is honestly nothing to say about how the government treats civil servants that hasn't been said already. But that's not going to stop me. Other countries have unemployment benefits, a concept which is premised on the understanding that if someone is employed, they're in a position to take care of themselves. But in Zimbabwe, you actually struggle to differentiate between someone who is formally employed and someone arukia. In South Africa, a teacher earns around 15,600 rands. By no means a lot of money, but it's still enough to pay at least 10 Zimbabwean teachers. 10. Just this past April, the government, through the National Employment Council, raised the minimum wage in the catering industry by a whopping 96%, which means the lowest earner in the catering industry now earns at least 10,000 Zim dollars. That's just $67 US, proving once again that everything sounds like a lot if the starting position is zero.
Especially vashandi vekunhingirikini vanenge vakatsamwa these days because mheno zvukuitika but havasi kufara. Ndakapfuura neko last week, same order yandinosiruwa vaya yaitesta different. Kuzva kuti mawanzwa vinegar kana kuti manyimwa munyu kana kuti manyimwa kana kuti vawedzera ma-ingredients manyowani. But unotoona kuti kana nemunhu ari kupakurira kuti kupakura hakuswe munhu ari kufara. Havasi kufara, ngavachinje something. Havasi kubhadharwa here chiko.
One of the major reasons working in the public sector is so frustrating is the lack of upward mobility. We are a country that doesn't believe in deodorant and retirement. If it was up to them, Robert Mugabe would still be president today, and Augustine Chiwuri would still be the Commissioner General of Police. Lucky for us, it was up to the army. There's people in the civil service today occupying the same position that they were when Alec Manchester was still with Kiama Boys, way before he became Babashiro. If the big boss doesn't retire, no one from senior management is promoted, which means they either leave or they stay and make the most of their position while taking out their frustrations on middle management. Middle management, in turn, takes out their frustrations on whoever they can find at reception. Most times, that's me and you, the public. Have you ever been to the passport office?
Next!
Makadi.
Akaplaira
passport yangu.
What did I say?
Passport.
Mother, munozoti parapa pari nezve.
Nezvemapassport.
But hatisi kuita zvekuapply. Pana pari ngowedzerwa mapage.
Nezvei?
Kuwedzera mapage. Hamuona kuti passport inopera page 48. Isusu tobva takuwedzerera taura kuti 49, 50, 51 depending on mari.
Passport.
Hamutorina.
Andina.
Zvamuchose.
Kutotanga.
Mother, munoona kuti nyaya inyasiyana.
Ndibatsirei vanjani.
Magic, pana pasi kuita magic.
Ndauya pana 5 ndibatsirei.
Ato ma personal problems. Enyama kumira paside. Makutotamisira time. Muona vanhu vese vakawanda vakatomira kuda kutowedzera. Makutotamisira time. Mira paside. Next.
Vanjani ndikumura kubatsirei.
Mother, makutotamisira. Next. Makutotamisira time. Atite magic atite man. Passport 10 straight. Oh, makutotangana mapepa.
What usually stops most of these big bosses from retirement is that they are not confident they'll be able to maintain the lifestyles they've grown accustomed to post-retirement. If the big boss can't be sure of that, how can the low-level staffer even dream of retiring? Why are they even dreaming? So on goes the cycle of passive aggressiveness in the workplace. And in that environment, innovation and good ideas only exist as rumors. Sadly, this is not just limited to the public sector anymore. On top of lacking upward mobility, most private companies seem to have realized that if you can't beat them, pay them in bond. This is something that is happening despite the company collecting a good portion of its revenue in foreign currency. There's companies where top executives get all expenses paid for international trips. Yet you have workers of the same company struggling to make it to work, spending more than 2 hours in a Zipco queue. If you look at farming, this year Zimbabwe is expected to receive over 2.5 million metric tons of maize. And yet the driving labor force behind such an incredible yield still live in terrible compounds, earning less than $100 a month. A farm worker whose minimum wage is 4,200 Zim dollars needs at least 7.5 months of work without spending a single cent to be able to buy a ton. They can't buy what they're making. These are all situations where the government is not in direct control. Private players are choosing to deviously straddle the line between ethics and Jonathan Moore. We need to introspect as a country and find a way to deal with this colonial hangover. Because 42 years after independence, why are words like house girl, garden boy, murungu still in our vocabulary? Ubuntu at its most basic demands that we treat each other with decency. If employers don't respect their employees, employees won't respect their jobs. It's as simple as that. Did you know that NASA invested over $30 million into the construction of the Bedbridge Hotel? You probably didn't even know there was a Bedbridge Hotel, did you? The 140-room hotel was closed in 2016, less than 5 years after it had been officially opened. Who do you even cry to? Where do you even go when something as egregious as this happens? In 2015, over 300 Air Zimbabwe employees were unceremoniously dismissed. They took their grievances to the labor court. It wasn't until December 2020 that Air Zimbabwe was ordered to pay these workers salaries for the time they were out of work. The airline then argued that it is bound by statutory instrument which compels that it pays the money at 1:1 interbank rate. A person that was owed $20,000 would be now getting 20,000 Zim dollars, which is less than $250. Even when you win, you still lose. This is a situation that would have been avoided if the labor court was capacitated with more judges, meaning cases move quicker. Instead, here we are almost 6 years after the workers were fired and there's still no end in sight for them. Institutions like NASA and the labor court need to be ring-fenced against pilfering politicians. Speaking of which, how far that lady against NASA? Simon Chimbetu's Panayasipo carries the words, loosely translated, the lyrics say, as we celebrate today, there's someone missing. I found that there is no better way to describe labor relations in Zimbabwe. Those who toil and do most of the hard work are rarely included in the celebrations that come with the harvest. When it comes to it, there is very little we can do about how the government treats its employees. But me and you, we can do something about how we treat our own employees.
I've been a domestic worker for almost 2 years now. It was the easiest job to find at the time. My boss is a very complicated person. We spend the day together every day. We don't talk. Me, I'm a very talkative person. I'm a very people's person. I love talking. I'm not well paid at all because of the economy. They see us as people who are not educated enough. You're treated like a slave, mostly.
Don't be the reason someone never gets to see or enjoy the value of their labor. This has been another episode of Propaganda with Kandoro. And if everything goes well, see you guys next week.